Flashbacks. Past players, past legends.
And tonight we are pleased and privileged to introduce Tom Warhurst, recent inductee into the Norwood Hall of Fame. Of course, he wore the famous number 44, 246 games, 45 goals, obviously premiership player in 82, 84, life member, as I said, Hall of Fame, advertiser team of the year in 89, 3 state games, obviously the Crows' first couple of games as well, and we will go into that. And welcome aboard, Tommy.
Thank you, lads. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, mate. We normally talk with most of our guests about where it all started. Where was you? What was your junior club, and where did you start your footballing journey?
Yeah, well, I grew up in an Aussie rules family, so that helps. Father played for Norwood, and brothers played Aussie rules, so that was that was my start. Back in the 70s and 60s, there were no sort of district clubs you played for, so. Started playing footy at primary school at St. Iggy's there at Queen Street, Norwood, in sort of grade 3, and always enjoyed my Aussie rules. There wasn't much choice. You either played Aussie rules or what was the other choice? Basketball, probably. So it was just Aussie rules back then.
And I'll say that Tommy basically has always bled the St. Ignatius and Norwood colours too. Very fanatical about both.
Well, isn't St. Ignatius red, blue, and yellow anyway?
Yes,
so
yes,
Crows
yes.
as well.
Bit of that.
It was.
Yes.
It had those colours before the Crows. Probably
Yes.
after the state colours, but had them before the Crows. Yeah.
And so, Tommy, obviously, as you said, your famous father, and you were. One thing I think always to your credit, Tommy, you were very you knew your Norwood history and things there, and were very much Norwood, and came through the Norwood juniors, Norwood under-19 premiership player as well. Tommy, go through a couple of your highlights in terms of junior-wise, mate.
Yeah, well, certainly, I grew up on the wrong side of Kensington Road, so I was lucky that the old man was a life member at Norwood. Otherwise, I would have had to go to Sturt. So that was the first bit of luck.
Yeah, well done.
I can remember as a 15-year-old, getting an invite from a guy called David Bertelsmeyer.
Yes.
I don't know what position he held, but it was under Wally Miller at the time at the Norwood Footy Club, and I can remember being invited out to the under-17s and sort of umming and ahhing whether I should go, but intimidated at the time. But got dropped off by the old man. We trained at Morialta High School in those days. So, from there, got a game in the under-17s. Ross Porritt was the coach of the under-17s back then. And I can remember we didn't have a whole lot of success in our first year of under-17s. But as you said, the next year, under-19s, I sort of graduated, and, Duncan Fosdyke was the captain.
Yes.
And, we had probably 7 or 8 guys from that team play league footy, and probably had 4 or 5 premiership players in 82 from that team. Guys like, Rick Neagle and Fozzie. And
was Tomo through there as well? Was Greg Thomas through that one as well?
Yeah, Greg Thomas was around, and Neil Pearson played some league footy, and Jack Gallagher played some league footy. Dean Renfrey played league footy.
And of course, Fozzie was a junior. Jason Archer could seriously play. Unfortunately,
he could.
knee injuries there.
So.
But Fozzie dominated as a junior as well. Like he did win the 19s medal that year as well. So
yeah, I think Macca won the
17s,
17s medal that year, and Fozzie won the under-19. So we pretty dominant. We beat Port Adelaide in the grand final, which is always nice.
Yes. So go through. So you make your league debut in 81. Only the one game, and that, but it was against Westies at Footy Park. Go through any memories, particular memory. Against Glenelg. Against Glenelg. I apologise, Glenelg.
Yeah,
any particular memories of that one?
Well, I played the first minor round game in the reserves and must have done something right, and then got the call up for the Bays down at Glenelg, and started on the bench, and in a team full of my premiership heroes from years before. So I gather that not many of them knew my name, let alone, what I was good at. And I think I had a short run at some stage, had a couple of kicks, kicked the goal, but then got taken off. And I think we lost that game in 81. And then I think I got injured later that week at training and missed probably 7 or 8 games before I came back and played in the reserves for the rest of the year.
So, obviously, in 91, you make your debut.
81.
81. 91. You were drafted by North Melbourne. Just let us in on, because not a lot of people know how the draft system worked back then. You decided not to go?
Yeah, it wasn't as complicated as it is now, or there wasn't as, there wasn't a process driven by the AFL now. I think, every AFL team had a choice of drafting someone.
Was it
player.
2 Form 4s, and then you were tied for 3 years if you went? I reckon that's what it was.
I never quite understood that Form 4 thing, but my father had some business contacts who were on the committee at North Melbourne, so I don't think anybody ever saw me play. It was just word of mouth, and I can remember Barry Cable visiting me, my father and I, down here for dinner one night. Must have been some stage in 81, but I just I don't know, lack of confidence. Hadn't achieved much here in Adelaide, let alone thinking I could go to Melbourne and play. So so I decided not to, and North Melbourne dropped off pretty quickly, and then I had a Fitzroy in about 1980. Or maybe 5 or 6, got drafted when Fitzroy was going okay, but again decided not to go. Just my allegiances were at Norwood, and that's where I wanted to play.
You definitely bled red and blue, as I said. So 82, the start of 82, you started at centre half forward and played well against Port at Alberton as well, kicked a couple of goals in a win at Alberton, and then of course Neil Button came back, and then you ended up going back to fullback Tommy and settled in to a pretty resolute defence with Bruce and Jim Teal and that leading the way. Frank Stemper, Danny Jenkins, Wayne Schmal. It was a bloody good back line. Let's go through that side of things.
I fortunately did start at centre half forward for a few games in that 82 season. As you said, Neil Button was injured. I think that the team was that good that it sort of played around me a little bit. I was a bit of a decoy perhaps. And I don't know what I did wrong to get a start at full back. But Bruce Winter, I think, was in a hurry to handball.
Yes, he wanted to get out of the full back.
Yes. Off and move sideways. Yeah, I mean, Bruce is not overly tall. He might be 5'11", and not very heavy. And there was a lot of big forwards around. So I must have done all right the first couple of games, and got myself a job for life almost. Although I did play a lot at centre half back and had the run through centre half forward over the years as well when we were in really real trouble.
Because in the 82, and you would have, I know you well after one of your favourite games, I can guarantee, would have been when we absolutely pantsed Port Adelaide in front of, it was 17,500 and beat them by over 100 points. On a warm, balmy day too, Tommy. That was a big night at the Redleys Club as well.
Yeah, it's always good to host Port at Norwood, and we had a good run there for a while against Port. We had a very experienced team, and they were transitioning in a fairly young side, so we strung maybe 10 wins out of 11 through the 80s and sort of mid 80s, and then of course they turned the tables and probably whipped us 10 times in a row in the late 80s. But, Norwood Oval was pumping, and I think that was a game I stood Tim Evans.
Yes.
I had a dream the night before that Tim was going to get 10. I still remember that vivid dream, but fortunately...
A dream or a nightmare?
It was probably a nightmare. Was that the day AC got knocked out?
Yes, by Ray Hupperts, yes.
Yeah, so... it was a spiteful game, as they normally are against Port. So, but long memories, good memories.
What are some? I mean, obviously, Norwood and Port are some of the rivalry that goes back a fair way. Were there a few other teams in that era there that you matched up pretty well with?
Yeah, I mean, people forget that there were a lot of good teams back in the 80s.
Bloody oath there was.
Yeah, the Bays had good sides. Sturt came and went a little bit. North Adelaide had good sides. Westies won a premiership.
Oh, Westie's side in '83 was a very good
strong,
side.
Yeah. So the only teams that really didn't figure in finals too much were South and West Torrens. But the other teams, they all had big forwards and gun forwards. And, it's true to say we didn't like Port Adelaide, but we didn't like a lot of people, and they didn't like us. And that was how footy was.
Yeah,
in
it was
the 80s.
tribal.
It was pretty spiteful.
Oh, yeah. And Tommy, out of that, I reckon we always thought we underachieved. I've mellowed on that one. I reckon I've just become a bit more realistic as we're being older and looked through the other sides, and I've gone, hang on, Glenelg were a fair side. North Adelaide, in that 85, 86, 87 with that side, and I'm thinking, geez, and let's be real too, 82, the qualifying, we were in trouble at one stage, and then 84, and we will get to 84, your vital part in that, nearly gone against Centrals in the first semi, so it is such a fine line.
Yeah, it was. We probably should have made another grand final or two. I think we lost 3.
Yeah, we did lose some preliminaries
by less than a goal.
Yeah.
I know we had some,
against North Adelaide a couple.
Luck there at time with kicking against the wind and for 3/4 of that. But the other teams they were pretty strong too, and probably everybody bar Port thinks they probably should have won another one. I think Port might have won 3 in the 80s, late 80s, or bookended the 80s with premierships, and everyone else had a go during the middle.
Now, Tommy, I want to take you back and test your memory on this one, and it's probably not widely known amongst the Norwood faithful. The start of the 1982 second semi, and you suddenly look over, and there's a particular Norwood player standing next to you. Now, go. You want me to keep going, or what's your memory? Yeah, particular the late great Jim Till. Now you've gone to Bruce. What in the hell's Jim Till doing? You gonna ask him? And Bruce has replied, "Well, hey Tommy, I'm not that fucking stupid. Yeah, of course I'm not going to ask Jim Till." And the opening siren for this and the second semi start, and there is David Granger, looking around for Jim Till, and he has just run from the goal line and just ran up and hip and shouldered Granger and said, "You touch anyone today, you're gone."
Yep.
Yeah.
And we never, and I've spoken about this with Barmy, of all the stuff Granger did, he never did anything against us because he was shit scared of Jim Till.
And
weren't we all?
That.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us were scared of Jim, but Jim. Granger got me in a reserves trial at one stage. At least he told me he was going to do it, so I'll give him that credit. But Jim would approach Granger before every game, and as you say, basically say you touch one of my blokes and I'll put you on a stretcher. So we didn't have any trouble with him, and rest in peace, Jim. He was a fantastic player, scary cat.
Yes.
Even at training, if you were matched up 1-on-1 and some competitive work, you always bled a little bit with Jim. So got good memories of that as well.
An elite leader, but exactly that. As you've said, Tommy, he certainly had a wild side to him, and again, even as you said, even at training. Yeah.
What was it good to have someone like that in your back pocket to go? He's got your back no matter what. Yeah,
no doubt about it. They're very few people like Jim Till. I mean, as strong as an ox and determination and will to win, and matched by very few players that I've come across over the years.
Oh, and he was a very good player as well. He was fanatically tough. He was a very good player with shit knees.
Yeah, he had shit knees. I mean, I don't know who the surgeon was in the early or the late 70s, but he ruined it. Well, he didn't have much success with knees. We had Turbs on one leg, and Johnny Clark's career was finished. And there were a lot of guys with the same surgeon, I think.
Oh, you just think if those three had still been okay, you just think on the landscape, because we're not talking average players, those three. That's three.
They were guns, weren't they?
Guns.
Yeah.
Absolute guns. So we go through there. 83 was a bit disappointing, but I still want to, that Westies forward line with, Linda, Smith, Murat,
Luders.
Luders, Grosser. Yeah. It was an extreme. Jeff Morris, and then Conlon, and as the other one was. It was a bloody good side, and unfortunately they were too good for us. And then you cop Rick Davies on an on day when the Sturt midfield got right on top. It wasn't a great day that one, Tommy. The prelim.
No. Westies did have a good side. They recruited pretty well. Some of those Victorian guys didn't stay around too long, but they were there for a year, and they got themselves a flag. So good on them.
And then let's move on to 84.
Yeah, how did that start after you finished 83 in such similar circumstances as to going out a little bit earlier than what you would have liked?
Yeah, I can't recall the too much of the pre-season that year, but I can imagine that Barmy would have been pretty hot.
I think Barmy and Wally in that regard were always pretty circumspect and move on, and you can't change that day.
Yeah.
But
does that move on? We still had a core group of older players who wanted some success.
Yeah.
So we pretty confident that we could do well, although we didn't start well. Now,
no.
I don't know why we were 1-6. I don't know whether we were just shit house or whether we had injuries, but we weren't very good early.
And of course, then the famous game at Theberton where Greg Thomas came off the bench and kicked 4 in the last quarter, where if we hadn't ended up winning that game, there was an amusing bit of that game, Pete. And I'll see again if I test your memory on this one, Tommy. That Barmy, actually back then I very rarely went in the rooms, but I did go in the rooms after we'd come from the clouds. We were 7 goals down at three-quarter time to win.
Yep.
Walk in, and Tommy and Michael Aish were our 2 Norwood representatives on the Channel 9 footy show. And both you 2 guys wanted to go in that night because the West Torrens representative happened to be Kim Dillon. And Barmy may have had some other things, private duties with, so Kim Dillon wasn't his number one. He wasn't preferred number one person. Yep. And he may have told both of you, I don't give an F which one of you 2 goes in there, but just go in there and give Dillon plenty of shit.
Yeah, well, it's a bit more to that. I mean,
yes.
I think, Neil won't mind me saying that I think he was dating Dillon's ex-wife or girlfriend, and three-quarter time, we were, as you say, 7 goals down or something, and Dillon's come past our huddle at three-quarter time and had a few words to Barmy and a few words to some of our other champions and started twirling the ball like the basketballers do.
Yeah, and he did it in the last quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gave everybody extra motivation to get over the top. I don't know how much we won by, but it was sweet.
Oh, we won by a couple of goals in the end. We went all over him, and John Hall took a one-handed mark for us to hit the front, and the Norwood faithful, we really took over the pug hole in that last quarter. So it was a very enjoyable last quarter. The first 3 quarters weren't, but the last quarter certainly was.
No.
Got to ask, around about that time there, obviously some of the best SNFL days, the crowds, Malcolm, obviously a passionate supporter, was there for every minute of every game. What was it like playing in front of some pretty big crowds at some of these suburban grounds? Because we don't really get that sense anymore, do we?
No. I mean, they talk about showdowns now, Adelaide versus Port a couple of times a year. Well, there were showdowns every weekend here in Adelaide.
Exactly.
Because nobody liked each other, and they were big, substantial crowds for the size of the grounds.
Yes.
It's not like we were putting 17,000 into a ground that holds 60. We're putting 17,000 into a ground that holds 14. So people were hanging from the light towers and over the fence, and you could hear. One of the things I remember is just you hear everything, that the comments from over the fence. We probably heard Malcolm a few times giving us some advice, but
I may regret one day at Footy Park. I do apologise for that game, Tommy. Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. All's fair. But you hear opposition, and it's just huge. Even getting to the grounds was trying to find a park in
Yeah.
some suburban street, 800 metres from the ground. There was no VIP parking at any of these grounds. And then you had to run the gauntlet and go through the opposition supporters and always get a bit of advice. And it was just a great time to play footy and a great time for the AFL.
It's perfect that you said that. It just happened last year, so not the season's just gone, sorry, the one before, so 2 years ago now, with the first gather round bit. And when I got there, and it just happened that Fanda and I were walking down Wood Street together, and I've gone, this atmosphere and numbers walking around at the moment reminds me of the Norwood Port game in '82. So, and Fanda's going, of course, you'd think of something like that, Malcolm, and all that sort of things. But it was, and it was just awesome to be in Pat Nord Oval again, but they're only AFL only allowing 10,000 in. Where, hang on, I've been in Nord when there's been 20,000 in there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. It's still the best place to play footy for someone of my ability, anyway, and probably still the best place to watch footy because you're on top of the action. You can hear everything that goes on. So it's a fantastic place. Now
I have to ask, the Redlegs Club was still up and going around about then. What are your memories of the old Redlegs Club across the road on Wood Street?
Geez, there were some great nights, weren't there, Tommy?
Yeah. Although I've only just been reminiscing with some, my wife, and because we sort of got together when we were 19 or 20, so we had 10 years there, and it was just the meals were great. The meals were mandatory. They were sort of they were taken off your wages at the end of the year, so most of us ended up having to pay money after eating their 20 rounds, and the supporter base. We had so many great supporters, and they seemed, I shouldn't be rude, but they seemed elderly then. They were probably in their 40s, most of the supporters and coterie groups, because when I go back there now, those men and women are still there, and now they're in their 80s. Yeah. But they love the place more than I do. So, they're great people. And upstairs, of course, you had to get past either Winnie or Jim Teal, and because the $6 or $7 entrance fee was a bit too steep. So.
Go through the kitchen, yes,
up the back through the kitchen, all sorts of ways to get up to Sam's. But it was just it was the place to be. There wasn't many nightclubs around, and people tended to go to footy clubs. The Bay Disco was quite popular. Yeah. I can remember me and a few Nord blokes crashed that one night, and they wouldn't let us in, and it was all huge fun.
But it was, wasn't it, Tommy? Like, you catch up with people from every team on the Saturday night and buy a remarkable bit. If you hadn't on the Saturday night, you did on Sunday at the Bay, and you knew it was quite often things which anything which happened on the ground was generally sorted out at Sam's.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with all of that, but the teams no longer catch up. But back in the 80s and prior to that, I can remember my old man saying that back in his day they would, catch the tram down to Alberton for the dinner dance or whatever it was. Yeah. So, they were, nicer breed of people back then.
So moving through with 84, Tommy. So the first semi, Centrals, it looks like we're nearly gone. There's a centre bounce. The ball is kicked. You come through, manage to pick it up on the half volley and just jam it onto your boot. Trying to think whether it was Makarashi marked that handball to David Payne, who kicked the goal, and suddenly we were back in it and ended up winning by 17 points where we came from nowhere. And that was, I reckon we all thought it, because we'd come home with a wet sail, and in terms of our form towards the end of the year, beat South pretty convincingly in the elimination. But then that first semi, and then the prelim where Glenelg luckily kicked the goal like drunken wombats and had 2 goals 14 at one stage. So
it was like an AFL score these days.
Yeah, sort of came. But your memory. Can you remember that? Can you remember that incident where you've got the ball onto your boot, just jam that on?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it a few times.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a wet, muddy day at Footy Park, and I didn't sort of plough through the centre square off the line too often. So I don't know why I took it upon myself to charge in off the half back. Maybe because we were 3 goals down with 5 minutes to go. But yeah, I can remember Johnny Platten was in the middle, and for a few seconds there, the ball was in dispute. And yeah, I mean, with a bit of luck, I did plough through and managed to handle the ball, cleanly. And I'd love to say I picked out whoever it was on the half forward flank, whether it was Taney
it was Matt. It was either Mac or H. Mark. Then it's annoying me that I can't remember.
I'd love to say that I, saw them, but I didn't. I just jammed it on the boot. But luck would have it. And then, we just, as you say, kicked the last 4 or 5 of the game, and got over Central. For some reason, we had difficulty with Central.
Yes.
Through the 80s, we won more than we lost, but they had some good players as well.
Malcolm, I reckon now you've got to go back and watch that final because it's going to bug you until you find it.
Jeff Wilson might get a text message in a minute. And then, so the grand final.
Well, just before you go on to the grand final, what was the week like leading up to that? Because coming from 5th, the first team to do it, all right, we're going to talk obviously about you've won it, but what was the week like as far as we've got this, can we do it? Was there a self-belief there right from the get-go?
Well, there certainly was a self-belief. I mean, even mid-year, we'd beaten Port, a couple of times, even though they were clearly on top. We'd beaten them, and we always knew that come September that if we'd get a chance to play them, we'd think we were a fair chance. So, that was the feeling, if I remember rightly. We were very positive on our chances, and I mean, I think they knew that we liked our chances as well, which probably helped. I mean,
and we thank Tommy there for his time tonight, and I think we'll split that one like we do with most interviews over 2 sessions. But
revealed a couple of things.
He did, so some good talking points there. Can't wait to go through that and pick out a few of them for our past players early segment there as well.
Can't complain he wasn't honest.
Not at all.
Let it out a couple there.
Absolutely.